Nightingale's combat is steamy, or rather steampunky at best. But how do firearms affect and fit into this magical realm survival game? And that's the thing about survival games. Combat is no stranger to it. But with Nightingale's combat being centered around the steampunk and magical kind of feel, it kind of feels like it could actually change the way firearms are handled in this game.
Oh, absolutely. The firearms, although rooted in real mid 19th century technologies, are oftentimes created in the stereotypical ways with magical workbenches, giving you a lot of opportunity. I mean, even in the varieties of firearms, the best way to explain how you can modify these weapons is by making magic bullets that are enhanced by essences that give them certain elemental abilities. And it's a tasteful way to tie that magic into the human world.
Yeah, and it's one of the more beautiful things about the game is that it doesn't seem like all of the firearms are like OP. They don't feel like they're immediately breaking the situation in which magic and the modern day kind of like firearm situation is going to happen because the firearms aren't modern and it doesn't nerf the magic to the point where you would rather just run around with a firearm shooting everything.
Right. And the other thing it doesn't do is it doesn't follow that steampunk trope of, oh, well, we want a steampunk effects to it. So let's make this completely overcomplicated, asinine gun design. Something that you would see in, say, World of Warcraft or a lot of steampunkish games with certain fantasy elements. They're always over the top. Why are there gears on a gun? You don't need it, and I like the fact that they're real world application weapons, especially since the story of Nightingale is that our world has collapsed. So it's still our real world, but the Fae and the humans started working together. And then, of course, somewhere along the line, we abused what was given to us and absolutely torched our own home planet.
And that's actually one of the things I enjoy about Nightingale's firearms is you can't ignore that they aren't actually showstoppers in the game, but they're kind of more or less they fit the theme. The way I describe or would describe the firearms in Nightingale is kind of like the elegant guns you would see from like a safari hunt back in the day or such and such, where like there is a elegance to the design, but it's not like you said, it doesn't look bedazzled with steampunk features.
Yeah, and I was so happy with the sling bow, but we were on a hunt for firearms for this episode in particular. And then the first firearm we get is a blunderbuss. And you and I were
Oh
like,
gosh.
yeah, we did it. We've got the blunderbuss. Nothing's going to get in our way. Turns out it's just as stinky as a normal everyday blunderbuss would be. You put junk in the tip, you fire it, it doesn't do much. But it did get me excited to learn the ammo crafting and the mechanics. The range is better than a bow. It does shoot more straight. Um, and it was just that little taste before you start getting into some of the traditional weapons. I'll go ahead and read a list if you don't mind. Out of the pistols that I could see in the game, we have the Porter pistol, the Webley revolver, the Lancaster pistol. And the Lancaster pistol you can get from the Essence Trader in the forest, whereas some of the other ones you have to get from specific traders. And I really like the fact that they're just real world. For those of us who like guns or love history, we're going to recognize these names right off the bat. And I think that's really neat. If you were to choose a gun to use a Nightingale, would you go shotgun, rifle, or pistol?
Probably go rifle. I like rifles a lot.
Yeah, I'm a
Plus, the
rifle guy
feel of them.
myself.
Yeah.
Well, that and the
Like when
enemies
I.
we're fighting, I don't want to get close to an elephant to shoot it with a shotgun. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's definitely hilarious. You know, I was able to level the blunderbuss up to tier three. I'm not going to tell you how much better it got, but I will tell you I found out a funny story. You know when you hold right click and it shoots you back a little bit because it's like a big buckshot of it.
Yeah.
I found that when you get the soaring enchantment from those intellect areas, the puzzles, um, you can jump in the air, and then when you're coming close to the ground, you can shoot that off, and it'll put you back up in the
You
air.
know, I was wondering if it did that because when we were testing the blunderbuss out, I had stood on a rock and I'm like, "Ha ha, you knave, I have a gun." I went boom and I went flying. That was when we found out there's a left fire mechanic for that gun. That is much more effective. But yeah, I see some of my favorites too, like playing Red Dead. You know, you see a lot of the Winchester rifle, and that's a hunting rifle, and I'm just so excited that that's in the game. The rifle you can get from the desert by or the swamp trader is the chestpot rifle, which is a French rifle, bolt action, looks like the early precursor to say the M1 Garand or the Car 98. I really, really, really like this era of firearms. And the fact that you don't have to put a bunch of doodads or gizmos on it. You just enchant the bullets and upgrade the materials the gun's made out of, which is so cool.
And that's what I love about Nightingale's firearm combat is it doesn't feel like the firearms are going to be, like I said previous, overly OP, and then my only weapon I will ever use from when I get them. They feel like they're an additional piece that you can carry on you in the fight. Your melee is still important. Your magical items are still important. Using enchantments on your blades or such, and even using magical ammo in them is just as vital as the firearm itself, right, Jarl?
Well, not only that, but the sling bow doesn't go out of flavor. There are no silencers for these old weapons. And when we were testing out the blunderbuss, we were handling a small mob of three. And when we fired it, all of a sudden we were handling a mob of nine. And in places like the desert, where we were already trying to run from the egregious amount of goblins that are in the area, it makes you realize that there's
Yeah.
still some validity to the sling bow. But I think my favorite thing about our aha moment with the firearms actually had nothing to do with the firearms. It had to do with the fact that we were trying to unlock the firearms by raising our gear score. And it was what did you
Mhm.
discover when we were bringing materials for you to make our clothes? What was the cool thing you discovered with them?
Oh, so I discovered, based upon the materials you guys were giving me, is that I stumbled upon that some of the gear was not the same as other parts of the gear. And I found out that the materials you use to make your gear not only affect its cosmetic look, but also affect the attributes attuned to it. So, like specific things like fabled elephant hide or, leather that's made from it, and so on, all affect the attributes of the gear that you're making. And that was a pretty cool moment because you actually could see somebody walking around with a beautifully adored, wrapped handle with elephant hide, and you could be all like, "Oh, that probably is a good weapon," instead of it being like just a fashion choice.
Or Dimension stupid yellow boots. And we were like, how did you get yellow boots? But it helped us so much because when you look at the recipes for the barrels and the components that make the guns, it just says ingot. And naturally, we're like, well, what ingot? Do we need like a steel ingot or a tin? No, it's ingot. Because you are going to find rare materials, as some of them magical metals from an ethereal plane that you can make ingots out of.
Well, what I really enjoy about this is it finally starts introducing more of the magic into the combat and really starts to define people's classes. Because Nightingale is a classless survival game, and with being able to choose what attributes on your weapon, what materials it's made out of, and how they affect it, you can really start to define the class. And that's all done based off of magical creatures' bones, hide, the ingots.
And it kind of reminds me of the backgrounds in Nightingale too, because at first you and I, we didn't see a point to the backgrounds. So when you make your class, you could do soldier stuff. But if you actually look at it, the classes they have certain proficiencies or they have certain like health bonuses and stuff, and it gives you reason to probably take on certain duties around the camp over others, which I really, really, really thought was pointless at first. But now that we're getting magic weapons and it takes such an investment to gear or customize your gear to a specific use, now it's more, I think Dimension would be better off with this because of who he is. And then you start for, passing these elements on to people while they're scarce.
And folks, unfortunately, it brings us up to a wrap of this episode about Nightingale's steampunk combat and how they fuse the magical world with the melee combat and so much more in this beautiful game. Join me in thanking Jarl of Goats being my co-host. His Twitch link is down below. And also, join me in thanking Dimension119 for playing with us during his Thursday nights in Jarl of Goats channel. And finally, don't forget our producer, Red Falcon. Thank you very much, folks, for watching our episode, and to talk for now.
Bye.